Before becoming a winemaker, Norm Hardie worked as a sommelier with Four Seasons Hotels for 6 years. He then studied wine at the University of Dijon and apprenticed with several wineries in Burgundy, Oregon, South Africa, and New Zealand. In 2005, he opened his own winery in Prince Edward County, Ontario. It's a long red barn built into a limestone cliff, meant to showcase his spectacular wines, not the gift shop. Welcome and thanks for chatting with me today, Norm.
Well, thanks for having me. We have a beautiful day here in Prince Edward County. The sun's shining. We have a vintage ahead of us that if the weather stays like this, it's going to be a record one.
Fantastic. Now, you took 10 years to prepare to become a winemaker, so you apprenticed at wineries around the world. So we know you're thorough, Norm, but are you also a masochist? Why did you choose Prince Edward County where it's so challenging to make wine?
Well, I think the foundation of all the great wines around the world. If you look at France, look where the best Syrahs are grown. They're right on the north of the Rhone, right on the edge. The best Pinots are right on the edge in Burgundy in the north. Then you go to Champagne, and they can just get right there. And my feeling is those best wines have always been made on the edge, and climatically, we're certainly on the precipice here. But most importantly, we have these incredible calcareous limestone soils that I searched the world for, and I found them 150 kilometers away from my starting point.
That's great. And is that part of what makes Prince Edward County different from, say, Niagara?
Yeah, the soils are fundamentally a clay limestone base, but it's the type of limestone that we have here. We have a very soft, shaly limestone that we see in Burgundy, whereas Niagara's foundational limestone is more dolomitic, something that you see in the Dolomites in northern Italy, fundamentally both clay limestone, but here we have the soft limestone, which makes this place very, very special.
Now, I've heard that, soils make a difference. I mean, that's the big talk, terroir, to use the fancy term, in the wine world. But does limestone and the type of limestone that you're talking about really put some sort of taste into the wine, or is it just sort of a drainage issue that challenges the vines and makes them suffer, which in the end creates great wine? I think there's no question that the limestone does impart its flavor. And, when I source some fruit from amazing sites in Niagara, and if I taste my Niagara Pinot 9 right next to my County Pinot 9, where viticulturally they're treated the same, vinifications were very similar, but there's definitely a terroir difference. The Niagara, having less limestone, is bigger and richer and more full-bodied, and then the county is a lot more feminine and delicate. And we see this in Burgundy as well. The Côte de Nuit, the Côte de Nuit and Côte de Beaune, the Côte d'Or is split into the Côte de Nuit and Côte de Beaune. Côte de Beaune has a lot more limestone, and the wines out of the Côte de Beaune tend to be more feminine and more delicate. And then you go further north, where climatically it's a little cooler, and you're expecting the wines to be not as to be less opulent, and it's actually the soil that changes it, because in the Côte de Nuit there's a lot less limestone and more clay, and then you get these bigger, richer flavors. And so is Prince Edward County also a lot colder than Niagara, like in terms of the growing season? How cold does it get up there with the winters?
The winters are our biggest challenge, and why no one plants it in the county until, well, they planted 100 years ago and the vines died, and then until the late 1990s, is that we do get minus 25 every winter. We don't have a body of water north of us that doesn't freeze. So when those Arctic blasts come from the north, but like Ottawa, you feel them. Whereas Niagara is protected by the lake. And the lake doesn't freeze over, and we could have minus 31 here, and they could only have minus 22, minus 23 in Niagara.
So you have to literally bury the vines or part of them in the winter. It's called hilling or something like that?
Yeah, we essentially, viticulturally, we cannot grow a trunk system. So all our grapes grow very close to the ground. We do it's almost like a bush vine pruning. And in the fall, we take some canes that are grown during the year, and we tie them down to a wire on the ground, and then we cultivate the soils, and we literally put a big V-blade behind the tractor, and we tell the tractor driver to hit the gas like a New York cabbie would. Stay straight. And you watch the soil going up, and you think, how are those plants ever going to survive? And come the springtime, when we unbury them, they look magnificent. And the idea is not a new one, but it's the challenge. People bury their roses. Now, when you got 10 rose bushes, that's one thing. When you got 50,000 vines, that's a lot of soil, and you have to be very efficient at doing it. And the early years here were quite tough. We were developing systems on how to do it, and now 10 years on, we've become very efficient at it.
Wow. So what is it that you think Prince Edward County needs to do better? It's got all this great potential, but what needs to change and get better for the area as a wine growing region?
I've seen huge steps in the quality of wines in the county, especially over the last year. We have a terroir tasting every year where all the county growers get together at the Crystal Palace, and and the public's invited. And this year I had some great volunteers manning my table, and it gave me the opportunity to actually get around and taste a lot of the wines. And what I was really impressed with, I've seen huge strides in the quality of the wines that are coming out of here. There was consistently a lot of very good wines. I think as a region, we're in a comparative world wine market, and our viticulture here, I think, is very good, and we need to continue to grow in our winemaking capacity. And I think it's of any region. You see Niagara, and I see the quality and the steps that they've made in the last 10 years, and the quality that here we made these big steps. We've got to keep going forward because the rest of the world is going forward. We can't stand back and say we've got the greatest terroir in the world and the wine's going to make itself.
Right. All this talk, Norm, is making me really thirsty, and just conveniently, we've both arranged to taste your County Pinot Noir. Have you got your bottle there?
I absolutely do. I've got my glass and I've got a bottle. I do a lot better with the glass. With the glass, yeah. Well,
at least you're not siphoning it off from the barrels directly and drinking. So here we go.
Not today.
Absolutely. So I'm going to pour myself a healthy glass here, and in a nod to the great Gary Vaynerchuk, this will be the last time I use this word, but let's give it a sniffy sniff. And tell me what you get from your wine in this County Pinot.
I definitely, on the nose, I get beautiful, the bright red fruits that I always associate with Prince Edward County, and that's that lots of limestone gives those bright red fruits similar to those of the Côte de Beaune. Mm-hmm. This is a 2009. We don't use a lot of sulfur in our wines. We're starting to get some darker fruits coming through, and then the color I think is pretty extraordinary. It's got a beautiful dark ruby color to it. And then on the palate?
Mm-hmm. Yes, on the palate.
This is for me, this is great Pinot. Mm-hmm. It's all about femininity and purity.
And the acidity is great. Oh my gosh, it just wakes up your mouth, literally whets your appetite.
Well, this is I think something we've lost with drinking New World wines, and if you look at the great Old World wines, the great Syrahs, the great Pinots from Burgundy, they all have firm acidity, and acidity is the backbone, it's the structure, what focuses the brightness and palate very nicely.
Right, and it really lifts the fruit. And I think a lot of people get afraid when they hear the word, acidity, acid. I don't want to drink acid. But to me, acidity is to wine what salt is to food. It brings forward flavor as well.
Absolutely, and also, the reality is most Pinots are drunk at the table when people are eating. And when you're eating, you have oils and things coating the sides of your mouth. And what you need is acidity to lift and cut through those. If you're drinking wine that doesn't have acid, then the flavors of your food are not going to be as great. And secondly, you're going to fatigue of that wine very quickly because it's not livening your palate. Right. And acidity. One of the great things we have here in the county is we get what I call physiological ripeness ahead of sugar ripeness. In the New World, often they have to let the vines hang for a long time to get the flavors. But by leaving them out there, they're getting higher sugars and lower acids. Here, we harvest grapes at 22 Brix, and that probably doesn't mean a lot to many people, but we're harvesting wines at potential 11.5%, 12% alcohol, and we have flavor at this standpoint. But, you know, the analogy I love to use is California strawberries are sweet. Ontario strawberries are not as sweet, but they have acidity and they have flavor, and this is what we get out of these soils.
That is perfect, Norm. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. And you've done your job. You've made me very thirsty, so this glass is not going to go to waste. Cheers.
All right. It's afternoon somewhere in the world, and cheers, and thanks for having us. And hopefully we'll see you and all those listening today in beautiful Prince Edward County this summer.
Absolutely. Thanks, Norm.
Take care. Bye-bye.